Okay, great. Great. So good evening. Welcome to our second regional public forum for Envision 2050, which is the title of our update to the regional long-range transportation plan. And for those that don't know us, it's a quick introduction. My name is Justin Howard. As I said, I'm the transportation director here at the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. And I am joined by several of my colleagues here tonight. To my left, Jessica Belanger, one of our transportation planners, Chris Curry, our transit manager, Shravanti Gopalan Narayanan, one of our transportation planners, and working the Zoom is Carla Andrus, our GIS analyst. So, for those of you in the room, our refreshments in the back, folks at home, no refreshments for you. Have some popcorn at home. Excellent, Carl. Okay. So first, let's go over a little housekeeping with some instructions on how you can participate in tonight's forum. So as we go through the meeting, there will be pauses in the presentation where we will ask the audience and here and at home their thoughts on specific aspects of the work being presented here tonight. So at the end, there will be a question and at the end, there'll be a question and answer session where we'll take all of your questions at that time. So how do you participate? So this is a hybrid meeting. There are people in person and there were people on Zoom. So if you're in person, you'd like to ask a question, feel free, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. For those people at home, are you helping me here? So for those people at home, there are virtual meeting controls. So during the prompts during the presentation, please feel free to answer those prompts in the chat. So you will go into the chat and write in your answers, and Carlin will help and read off those during the meeting. So at the end, when we have the question, answer, and discussion session, if you would like to speak, please use the raised hand function, which is under reactions in your toolbar. And once your hand is raised, we will be notified that you raise your hand. And when we confirm that you speak, please unmute yourself and speak and tell us your question. Your statement. During the presentation, for those at home, please keep yourself muted so we can minimize the background noise. So that being said, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So just as a test for those who paid attention to the instructions, we have an icebreaker for you. And so for people at home, please put your answers in chat, and people here in the room, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. So the icebreaker question is, what Envision 2050 events have you attended so far? So there was a kickoff back in November. There were several meetings with municipalities, focus group meetings, partner meetings, anything. This could be your first event if you like. So I'm just going to open it up if anyone wants to raise their hand in the room and tell us your experience with our engagement during this plan. Okay, Bill.
Yes, there was a online meeting about freight, which was interesting. I think it was it was about bike ped, but I ended up talking about freight. Okay, as Shravanti knows me well enough. Okay.
So our bicycle and pedestrian focus groups. Okay, great. Anyone else? Ethan?
Right, so I think I've been to 4. The
4.
Yeah, the kickoff, 2 focus groups, and this one.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, I also hosted a meeting in a bar.
Anyone else want to chime in? Okay. Let's go to people at home. Looks like we've got you in the chat.
Yeah, just reading off here. I think you people in the audience could read them as they are popping up. Some people been to the kickoff meeting. I think we've got like 2 or 3 people who've been to at least one.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So history of Wanalancet Mills. I just wanted to before we dive into this meeting tonight, just want a short history lesson. Standing tonight. We're in Mills. So the land along the Merrimack River in Lowell, Pennacook people, and who were primarily fishers, farmers, hunter-gatherers, and the building we stand in tonight, Wanalancet Mills, is named after Pennacook Chief Pascaway's son, Wanalancet. And lesson on Wanalancet Mill. It was first constructed in 1832 by Suffolk Manufacturing. Mill produced fabric, such as rayon and polyester and acrylic, and this building has been carefully restored and now houses UMass Lowell and various other businesses. And we really like to thank UMass Lowell for this here tonight. Acting as a host in this really wonderful space. So that being there it works. Okay. So a little background on who we are as an agency. So the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, or NIMCOG, is one of 13 regional planning agencies in the Commonwealth, and we're a public agency. We're governed by a policy board made up of elected and appointed officials from each of our 9 communities. And the board is set to come together to increase the capacity of our member municipalities and really foster regional cooperation and coordination among each of our different communities. And as an aside, NIMCOG staff are in particular, our transportation staff also serve as the staff to the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is tasked with carrying out the transportation planning process in the region. And tonight we have one of our MPO members, Pat Wojcik, who is also a select board member from Chelmsford and a longtime NIMCOG counselor. So she's here to just say a few words about the MPO and its importance to improving transportation in the region. So with that being said, I'll just pass it over to Pat to say a few words.
Thanks. So if we could have that screen that's supposed to come up for MPO. Okay, thank you. All right, so the Metropolitan Planning Organization is a federally created organization, and there's many of them all across the country. One of the main functions of MPO is to program the Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the TIP. And I know you're going to hear different acronyms by the end of the evening tonight, so I'll try to keep mine pretty much understandable. So anyway, currently the Northern Middlesex MPO is allocated between right around $11–12 million per year, which goes up typically every year a little bit. So we have about $11 million that we can program. And as you know, $11 million these days. So there is, and most municipal organizations and cities and towns and states, there's a lot more requests than what there is funds to fund or to program all those requests. So we do have to meet periodically and come up with a program that usually goes out about 5 years. We deal with all modes of transport, walking, biking, cars, trains, and buses, and including working with the LRTA. And as you notice on this slide, there's 7 voting members of the MPO. The first 2 listed are from state agencies, and it's important to have those people on the MPO because they help facilitate the design, determine the cost, and help manage the projects. But the other 5 slots are local representatives. Myself from Chelmsford, Andrew Delorier from from Billerica, Dan Rourke from Lowell, Tom Bowman from Dracut, and Karen Tullio from Tingsboro. And I think it's important to have this local representation as far as deciding what goes on the tip, because every day we see where the needs are. Every day we know what the issues are, where people are struggling, where the congestion is. So I think it's so critical to have locals on there. And believe it or not, there have been situations where us, the local folks, have overridden what the state folks have wanted to do in the tip. So we do make a difference. So if you have any questions about anything with the tip, reach out to one of us. I'm sure everybody would be glad to talk to you, and I certainly would. We had a meeting today. We get an update every month on the tip on where the status is of all the programs that are ongoing. And we heard about this program again today. The regional transportation program kind of feeds into the tip. So that's where it starts, and then it goes through some other steps to get there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to continue with the program. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Belanger. I'm a transportation planner with the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, and I'm just going to provide a brief agenda for our presentation tonight. We'll start off with an overview of the regional transportation plan. We will review the existing conditions and an analysis of our region. We'll go over our engagement activities, survey findings, performance measures, financial allocation, previous projects, and then we'll finish up with next steps in our timeline, along with questions. What is a regional transportation plan? So the plan objectives are to establish a clear guide that identifies and analyzes our region's transportation infrastructure and service-related improvements. The purpose is to direct transportation investment priorities over a minimum of a 20-year time horizon for all modes of transportation. The purpose of the RTP is to provide data and projected transportation trends and design systems to respond to those trends. On the bottom of the slide, you'll notice that there's an important note. And in order for a project to be funded in the Transportation Improvement Program, projects must be listed in the Regional Transportation Plan. And the Regional Transportation Plan is updated every 4 to 5 years. Next slide, please. Envision 2050 is our comprehensive vision for the future of transportation in the NEMCOG region. By projecting and planning for anticipated growth over a period of 30 years, this plan will establish a foundation for efficient and equitable transportation options for all users. Quality, safety, infrastructure, and activity on communities that have been historically marginalized. Goals and performance measures. For this plan, we have a number of goals, and the performance or measures are how we measure our progress towards those. The first goal is improve safety of our transportation systems. The second goal is efficiently manage existing transportation assets and infrastructure. The third goal is improve travel time and reliability for people and goods. The fourth goal is ensure that the transportation network supports economic development needs and accommodates future economic growth. Minimize and mitigate the impacts of the transportation system on the environment, including air quality, water quality, wildlife, and climate change. Goal number 6 is provide equitable transportation access and service quality for all communities with an emphasis on historically marginalized groups. I'll pass it over to Chris Perry for existing conditions.
Mr. Story, transit planner here with the council. So I'm going to do a quick, brief overview of the existing conditions in the region. Within the NIMCOG region, there are 1,763 miles of roadway, 345 miles of bicycle and pedestrian trails, 572 miles of sidewalks, and only 25 miles of roadways with bicycle facilities in them. The Lowell Regional Transit Authority is a primary provider of transit service in the region. They operate 19 bus routes. They run 42 buses during peak hour service, covers 255, more than 255 miles of roadway. The hours are from 6 a.m. to 7:30 on weekdays and 7:15 to 7 o'clock on Saturdays. And currently, there's no service on Sundays. As you see in the graph, the ridership was just under 1.5 million prior to the pandemic. And so in 2020, the numbers dropped to near 600,000. That's climbed a little bit back in the last 2 years, up now to just under 700,000 for the year. The LRTA also provides a demand response service, which Roadrunner, speak up. Through the Roadrunner service, it was through both the Lowell-based ADA Roadrunner service and the community-based Councils on Aging service. The LRTA assists COA service operates in all communities with the exception of Dunstable, which does its work, offers service through a private provider. Our COAs run about 19 buses in peak hour, minibuses. They operate from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. with no service on the weekends. The Lowell-based Roadrunner is an ADA service that operates within a 3/4 mile buffer of every fixed route and encompasses the entire area, city of Lowell. At this time, they're running 11 minibuses in peak service and operate the same days and hours as the fixed route service. As you can see from the graph, they too took a tremendous hit with the onset of COVID from just under 100,000 trips a year. It dropped to about 50,000 in 2020 and up to 80,000 in 2022. Now, this graph depicts the preventable accidents in the LRTA, a rate of accidents per 100,000 miles. As you can see, 2015 represents the very busy, as I remember, snowy year, 2015. And then the number dropped significantly and started to climb back up in 2019-20. This is primarily because of the change in the FTA reporting requirements for for the accidents. Now they include every little thing in the mirror might hit a stop sign or something like that. A proactive approach to maintain the accidents data. All right, these are the bicycle and pedestrian crashes from 2010 to 2019. The light blue is pedestrian crashes, the dark blue are the bicycle crashes. Crashes make up about 50% of the accidents in any given year. And as you can see, the crashes sort of peaked in 2014 and 15 and has been steadily declining since then, 2019. This is largely because there's been more funds dedicated towards safety. We need to continue in that direction. Finally, this slide represents the vehicle crashes by percentage of accidents by community for the years 2017 to 2019. Lowell, with the largest population, the highest density of housing, has the highest percentage of accidents, roughly 50%, 49%. And Dunstable being the least developed and fewest number of residents has the lowest percentage of accidents, which kind of makes sense. That's it. Thank you. Let me turn this over to Siobhan for engagement activity.
Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Shanti Gopala Narayanan. I'm a transformation planner at Manipag. I'll now go over the various engagement activities that we've done in the past few months. Next slide, please. So as a first step, we met with all the 9 communities in our region. So we met the municipal staff individually to discuss different project priorities for each community. And then we met different regional partners in our region, which includes Middlesex 3, LRTA, Lowell Regional Transportation Authority, UMass Lowell Student Government Association, Belvedere Neighborhood Association, Mass Hire. So we developed and populated a list of interested regional stakeholders throughout the process. And after that, we conducted 2 focus group meetings in January, one for pedestrians and bicyclists, and the other one for transit users. Both of these focus groups began with a presentation, and we provided an overview of what RTP is, and then we had breakout rooms and group discussions to learn about the challenges that pedestrians or bicyclists and transit users that participated had. So after that, we actually had a meeting in a box. So meeting in a box, for those of you who don't know what meeting in a box is, it is basically the NEMCOG staff developed a material, and they provided it to interested regional stakeholders. And on behalf of us, they conducted meeting in a box for a small group of people to learn about specific transportation issues depending on the group. Then we conducted 2 public meetings. One is the kickoff meeting that we had back in November 2022. During that time, we had our survey open, Envision 2050 survey, which was open till February 2023 to get feedback from our residents and others in our community. And at this point, I would like to thank all our municipalities and all our partners who helped us to get the survey out to as many people as possible. And today we are here at our second regional event, Envision 2050 Public Forum 2, to share the update on various activities that we've conducted so far. Next slide. Oh. So let us now look at the various themes that we heard from our different engagement activities. In terms of safety, travel speeds, crossing distances, and signal timings. In terms of access to transit, bus frequency, reliability, routes, and multimodal connections were mentioned. In terms of prioritization, emphasis on jobs, senior centers, access to key destinations like Boston Logan Airport and other transit hubs came up. In terms of walkability and sidewalks, there were a lot of concerns on signal timings, pavement markings, first and last mile connectivity, bus stops, that is location of bus stops, frequency of routes, and construction in dense areas. So we have a prompt for the participants now. If you're in person, please raise your hand. And if you're virtually joining us, please respond to us in the chat. So the prompt is, what other themes would you like us to include? Yeah. Do you think we should add something else to this?
I was thinking connectivity, but I see that it's there. Trail connectivity and maybe a historical element that you, as in placemaking, that you make an area attractive for people to walk or bike and grow the realization of how much history there is along the way.
Also, consider the idea of low hanging fruit or the most bang for the buck. If there's someplace where there's just a stretch of someplace that's really terrible, and you could fix up a half a mile or a mile, and it would alleviate a bottleneck or a gap in something.
Anyone else?
I did have one. This is Chris Trabou. So my thing is, I looked at safety. It says traveling speeds, crossing distance, and signal timings. One of the things, have you guys ever looked at just, well, you probably have, is road design itself? So the thing that I've noticed is that, so streets, like, you can lower the speed limit on a street, but people will go the speed limit they feel most comfortable on that road. It's built very wide roads that are built, people will just zip down them. So whether it's looking at, road diets in terms of making the road a little bit smaller, and then trying to focus on other things kind of to reduce, because that will probably, increase pedestrian safety. And then also too, whether it's adding a curve to a road, so that when people actually feel like, oh, well, this is the speed limit for a reason, like when there's a lower speed limit, say in Pepperell, I can understand because there's a lot of windy roads. So it actually doesn't feel comfortable as a driver going fast on those roads. So speed, I notice a lot of, like, people just go, oh, we're going to put the speed limit as 25. And that doesn't just, it doesn't change the psychology unless you have like a constant amount of people on there. So I think maybe road design and other measures like that, whether it's or even speed bumps, but I don't know, people in our town don't seem to like them, but those are things to kind of make it so that there isn't an incentive to drive aggressively and promote, and then people feel that they can go and walk and comfortable in that sense.
Chris, thank you for your comments. Roadway design is absolutely something we want to prioritize when looking at our roadways. To your point, we know that when a street or a road is wider, people are more likely to speed on it. You mentioned that there's a windy road in Pepperell. The windier the road is, people tend to slow down because you're really forced to do so. So roadway design is absolutely something that we will be looking at as part of our plan. Thank you for your comments. We ask that all participants at home hold their comments and questions for the end.
We do have some from the chat.
We have one more in
Thank you
person.
from in-house.
Hello, this is Adam Bakey from UMass Lowell. One thing that I don't see anywhere on there is anything to do with sustainability and decarbonization, given the state's very ambitious goals that it's established for decarbonization. It would seem like that should be considered in prioritizing projects.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a good point. We did not hear that in our engagement, but that is something that we should be reminding our municipalities about. So thank you.
Hi, this is Ethan. I think I can probably speak to why that's not there. And I think if you look at most of the things these are basic needs. The fact that things need to be safe, buses need to be frequent. Those are very basic. As a person who rides a bus every day, I think about whether or not my bus will show up first. And then after that, I consider if it's an electric bus or a diesel bus. If there's no bus, I'm not gonna really think about what kind of bus that is. But to also build on what Chris mentioned earlier, there could be efforts, especially within NUMCOG, to have a coordinated design around infrastructure as a whole. Transit can be considered as an infrastructure, and Lowell, to my understanding now, is much more of an urban environment compared to the rest of the towns that are part of it, but to take advantage of that and really make Lowell an urban center and develop that, and not continue to put on parkades and parking garages in downtown for others to come.
Thank you. So yeah, we've got some comments from the chat. Tamar wants to make sure that crosswalks are included as a theme. George mentioned pedestrian safety, no bicycles, e-bikes, e-scooters, etc. on sidewalks. He said this would require a commitment to completing bike lanes and keeping them maintained. And then Anita says, I'm sure this is captured through ADA compliance, but accessibility for people with disabilities, opportunities for universal design beyond the minimum. And Kathy says she agrees. What about more EV charging stations?
Thank you, everyone, for sharing ideas with us. We've made a note of it. Thank you. So the next couple of slides have some pictures on existing conditions of infrastructure from some of our communities in our region. So these photographs are from Billerica, and as you can see, ADA accessible ramp and pavement at various places, it's broken, and there's lack of sidewalk, forcing people to walk on the roads. The utility pole is right in the middle of the sidewalk, which could, cause trouble for people on wheelchairs and pedestrians who are using that facility. So these are some pictures from Chelmsford, Route 110, and they show similar infrastructure issue, lack of sidewalks, really wide intersection with faded pavement markings, lack of signage for trailhead. So these are some photographs from Lowell, and again, some similar infrastructure issues, lack of sidewalks, crossings, and bike lanes and bike box. For those of you who wonder what a bike box is, bike boxes are a designated area at the head of a traffic lane at a signalized intersection that provides bike cyclists with a safe and visible way to get ahead. A few other issues are faded bike lane markings, and in some places where there are sidewalks, the surface are uneven, which could cause issues for users in wheelchair and strollers. I'll now pass it on to Jessica for survey findings. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, thank you. Now I'll share some of our survey findings. As Shravanti mentioned earlier, our survey opened up in November and it remained open till about the end of February. Our survey was open to the public for about 6 months, and we received a total of 441 survey responses. 23% of survey respondents were between the ages of 55 and 64. 68% of respondents were white. 71% of respondents stated that they own their own home, and 47% of respondents earn over $90,000 annually. 33% of our survey respondents reported having advanced degrees, which are a master's. Next slide, please. We asked participants, what are some of the barriers facing them when they're using transit services in our region? The first three responses, or the most popular responses, were proximity to key destinations, access to transit stations or stops, and the frequency of the transit service. Next slide. We asked participants, what are some barriers when walking throughout our region? The top three responses were lack of sidewalks, safety concerns, and maintenance of infrastructure. Similarly, we asked participants, what are some barriers to rolling in our region? And I'll take a second to define rolling. Rolling is the use of any wheeled mobility device that includes wheelchairs, skateboards, electronic scooters, etc. And the top three responses were lack of sidewalks, safety concerns, and maintenance of infrastructure. Next slide, please. We asked participants, what types of destinations need better transit connections or transportation connections was the question. And most of the respondents said jobs, healthcare services, and food retailers. Next slide, please. We asked participants to what we could do to improve transportation services in our region. Respondents said improve first and last mile connections, more multimodal services, and more frequent service. Next slide, please. The question is, what metrics should we prioritize when funding transportation projects in our region? You'll notice that all of the percentages on your left or right hand side are very close. Almost every survey respondent chose reliability as the top area that we should use when prioritizing our funding for transportation, followed by environmental impact, connectivity and coverage, equity and fairness, safety, the condition of physical infrastructure, and user cost. Like, pause at this moment. Does anything you see on the screen surprise you in terms of these rankings? We'll start with folks in the room. Initial. Chat, if you have any reactions, you're welcome to type them. Question for you.
The description of who took the survey did not seem to be a good sample of the transportation users. How do you expect to be able to compensate for that disparity?
So some of the survey respondents did not prefer answering those questions. So that might, account for a certain category. So but we are trying our best to get the survey to as many respondents as possible. We had flyers at LRTA. We had flyers at different bus stops. So we were trying our best to get the survey information out as much as possible.
We'd just like to add, we noticed that as well, that our survey maybe didn't reach the most broad audience. And there were some folks who did respond and said they prefer not to answer their race on this. But some techniques we could do to actually try to reach more diverse populations. One of the strategies that we did try was new for our agency was the meeting in the box, as Shrimanti mentioned. So that was sort of, we put together the materials and we found interested parties that were able to lead the meeting. Could be at a workplace, at their home, and invite some friends over, transit riders, bikers, walkers to sort of share. And it helps remove the barrier between us and sort of, we're not coming in as an expert. We're asking for them to have a conversation among friends and give us their authentic feedback on the transportation options. And that's something that worked really well. And you don't see that in the survey, but we do have that data that helped inform our. Is there anyone else before we move to the folks at home?
See much in the chat. Chris, we can unmute you. The only problem is we can't hear you too well in the room.
Oh, you can't hear me right now?
It's just very faint for the people who are in the room.
Oh, so it's fate for the people in the room to hear me?
A little better.
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, so, yeah, I think that the survey results of seeing, and I think that just too, with you guys is, like, a lot of the stuff, you guys, I saw that you guys posted had time when usually, I don't know, it was kind of during the day. So I like some of the stuff that you had out there, I wasn't able to do because I was at work. So I didn't know if that had to be affect the survey as well. Because the thing is I 100% agree. I think that a lot of people would agree with reliability and the environmental impact. I think that what is hard for people to realize is the user cost. So the question is how is that user cost? Is it going to be town by town, like when people talk about transportation, who's going to be fitting the bill exactly? Is it just going to be the users themselves? Because all of a sudden, if you make that cost high and you're not in the $90,000 income range, well, you're not going to have exactly a pleasant time, or you're going to use other modes of transportation, which might exacerbate other problems like Uber or Lyft or something else if the costs are too high. And then on the top of that, it kind of conflicts with reliability, because if you do it too low, well, then how can you have reliable service if you don't have the money for it? So the question is where's that money going to come from to create that reliability? And also to if you want to reduce your environmental impact, it's also going to cost money. So the question is, where's the money going to be to create the reliability and the environmental impact? Because if you put that all on the users, then that would just probably reduce even more the use of public transit. And and the people doing the 90,000, maybe they might use it or maybe a little bit, but the people that use it for day to day might find different alternatives.
Thanks for mentioning that. It's a really great point. There is a little bit of a push and a pull in terms of having the service be reliable and also sustainable. But then where does the additional cost fall? Is it the user? And you want to make public transportation competitive with other modes like a single occupancy vehicle trip or taking Uber or Lyft. So those are great examples. Thank you, Chris. We have a comment from in the room.
A question, is this survey done, or are there thoughts to reopen it to gather more responses?
The survey is currently closed, but we are open to feedback or comments. We're always welcome to speak with anyone.
Because I was thinking about trying to get greater representation, and this is an idea out there, but from my experience taking the 14 bus every day, it's a long trip, and most of the people go from terminal to terminal, meaning from the Gallagher station all the way down to the clinic or close to Burlington Mall where they work. It's about 30 minutes to 40 minutes. If somebody could just come along for the ride and ask those people, that might be a way to get the responses, because there's not much going on for about 30 to 40 minutes during that time, up to an hour. It's might be the best way to get responses from actual users. But one thing to mention from that front, I've noticed about, I would say a quarter to about half of those are non-English speaking writers. And so to be able to also have the survey, if it's not translated into a language they can understand, most of the languages I've heard are I believe, Spanish. I've heard a little bit of French, but mostly Spanish. So if we could have that, and if it's something that needs to be captured to have better representation, that might be an idea to consider.
Certainly, those. Oh, in the middle.
Marlies Henderson, Billerica. I'm sorry, but I have trouble even understanding this graph. Is that like if 6 people were answering this and they all each had an individual other priority?
So there were 441
Yeah.
responses to the survey, and we
But
asked them to rank in there.
So the ranking, everybody ranked it more or less differently.
For everyone that responded, reliability was the first. They were all close seconds, though. We asked them to rank their first.
I still have trouble understanding that it's almost all of them 90%. I'm not a mathematician, but
So we listed the options and we asked folks to rank them. order, just so
From
that
1
we
through
know.
6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then user cost.
Maybe next time you'll have to say, do the first and the second and the third. And
Top 3.
forget the other one, because this is an answer you can't do anything with.
Thank you. We appreciate your feedback. Oh, We'll just add, we did offer the survey in the top 5 languages for our region. We also translated the flyers, and we are open to having translations at these types of meetings, these types of public meetings. It's part of our Zoom form, and actually ask folks to select if they'd like any of those services. If that is a barrier, we want to hear about it, and we want to try to reach those folks. So thank you. I'll pass it over to Justin.
And just to add, Ethan, the bus that goes down to Burlington, I have personally ridden that bus and surveyed riders. So I really get that there is plenty of time on that bus for people to take surveys. And I was part of an LRT. When was that? Back in 2015 or so, where we surveyed every route. So just to, I guess we could talk a little about Chris Tribu's question about how do we pay for this. So we have some preliminary financial information. It's mainly on the highway side, but we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Next slide. Okay, so currently federal funding to the state is provided through bipartisan infrastructure law, which runs through 2026. So in order to forecast how much money is going to be available for transportation improvements through 2050 is kind of an exercise in what do we think is going to happen in the future. Will this, with the bipartisan infrastructure law that's in place, there was quite a bit of influx of federal funds. There's a lot of federal grant opportunities out there right now. So as we did the forecast, it came out to the state potentially receiving $32.2 billion from the USDOT through 2050. If things keep going as our recent transportation acts at the federal level continue to move forward in that manner. So using that 32.2 billion through 2050, that's 26 years. So what the state does is they distribute that fund into several programs. There are 4 major state programs in addition to our more regional priority program, which is what we use to fund transportation improvement projects through the TIP. So some of the programs, the statewide interstate maintenance, which includes work that's done on I-495 and a piece of 93 runs through our region as well. The non-interstate national highway system maintenance program, which is a lot of our state-owned numbered highways that run, or roadways that run through the region. And that includes Route 3, that runs from Burlington up to Nashua. The statewide bridge program, I'm pretty sure people are aware that that we're trying to rebuild the Rourke Bridge. That will be funded through this statewide bridge program, and it will be a recommendation within the regional transportation plan. Remaining statewide programs are funding geared towards safety, geared toward development of trails. The Safe Routes to Schools program, which the town of Dracut has an award right now, and they are designing a project around their school complex on Lakeview Avenue. The Complete Streets funding program, which the state offers to municipalities, and we've had several municipalities receive awards over the past 5 years with that program, and the plan is to continue with that program. The last program is really what we focus on with regional transportation projects. So that 11.8 billion is set aside for each of the 13 or the 10 MPOs, the 13 regions in the state. And the Northern Middlesex region is based on population and urban population and roadway miles, things of that nature. We get approximately 4% of that pot, which comes out to about $457 million over the next 26 years. And looking a little closer at those regional target priorities for the region, we kind of break it down into 5-year increments, except for the last year. I mean, you see a large increase. It's actually 7 years. We have a 26-year document. So one thing to note, in the first 5 years of this funding, that 24 to 28 set aside, that will include projects that will be programmed on the current transportation improvement program that is under development, and that will begin in October. So you will see projects that are far along in design being recommended to go into that time frame of the regional transportation plan. And as we move further out into the next 5 years and the next 5 and the next 5, kind of focus on how we spend our money. And that's where our engagement strategy has come into play from what we've heard from everyone through our outreach and through our discussions with municipalities on their priorities. And we look to kind of compartmentalize different kinds of funding programs, like safety programs, like transit improvements, active transportation, things of that nature. And we sort of allocate that funding into a set of different programs, and we will develop scenarios based on what we've heard through our outreach. So to give you just a quick look at of what implementation of the regional transportation looks like, we go back to our previous version, which we developed 4 years ago, and we look at some of the recommendations of that plan to see where they are now. So these are just a few examples of things that were recommended in the previous plan. And you see there are 3 roadway projects listed here: Boston Road and Billerica, which just went to advertising for construction and is very, very, very early on in construction. And that construction will last likely another 2 years. Nashua Road in Dracut, which was recommended in the previous RTP, has gone to construction, and it involves widening of Nashua Road, not just for capacity, but for complete Street 6. So we're looking at widening the road to put in bike lanes, to install sidewalks. We're putting new signals in and new crosswalks, and taking a complete streets look at, and that goes for all these projects. And if you're out in the western part in Dunstable, you'll see, you'll have noticed Route 113, which is Main Street that runs through Dunstable near the town center. There's a large roadway rehabilitation project, which also takes a complete streets look to improve bicycle accommodations in their town, construction of a sidewalk, and the town plans to expand upon this project into other parts to help build that sidewalk network in town, because that is a priority for Dunstable. And on the transit side, how we spent money since 2020. Well, we purchased 21 buses since 2020, and a lot of those are hybrid buses. So the aging fleet that was once diesel is now has now become more hybrid electric buses. The plan for the LRTA, and you will see this in the next 4 or 5 years, is to go towards zero emission fleet, to go into electrification of the bus system, and that involves changing how things work at the LRTA. It involves building infrastructure to handle electric buses. That doesn't exist at the LRTA right now. So we've got to put funding, and it'll be a recommendation in this regional transportation plan, funding for building that infrastructure, building the charging stations for these buses. And then once that is in place, the LRTA is going to start purchasing electric or zero emission buses. So these are the things that come out of this regional transportation plan. We're going to pass this back to Shrivanti to give us a timeline and lead us through the discussion.
Thank you, Justin. So in phase 1, we had our kickoff meeting and our survey available in November 2022, like I mentioned before. And then in December, we met with our municipalities and different partners in our region to discuss project priorities. And we continue to do these efforts in January 2023, while we also hosted 2 focus group meetings during that time for pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users. And then we started developing our draft plan in February, and we analyzed results from the Envision 2050 survey in early March. And today we are here at our second regional public event, Envision 2050 Public Forum 2, to give you all an update on the process. So next we'll be entering phase 3, where we'll continue to develop the draft document. And in June, we will present the draft plan to the MPO. And then we will release the draft for a 21-day comment period. In July, we will present comments and the final plan to the MPO for endorsement. We can take any questions now. As usual, in-person participants can raise their hand, and virtual participants can either use the virtual raise hand feature under reactions, or you can put your questions in the chat. And I just want to highlight that we will try to answer as many questions as possible. In case if we don't get to any of your questions, we have all the questions are recorded, so we will follow up with you.
That old American town meeting tradition, I assume questions also includes short comments. So, okay, so my name is Bill Cutner, and I live in Charlestown, the southernmost neighborhood of the Middlesex Canal. And I am representing the Middlesex Canal Commission, which the canal opened in 1803, operated for 50 years, so it closed 170 years ago. Went from the Merrimack River and Chelmsford down to Charlestown. And the Middlesex Canal Commission was set up by the state legislature in the 1970s and has representatives from each of the municipalities, several of whom are sitting in this room today. So And we will hear more about specific ideas about now, but I wanted to just give a brief little overview is as a historic resource, this is very important and it's underappreciated, and it's divided in these towns, and there's little snippets here, snippets there can be seen. There's more can actually be seen at the northern end around this area. I think it's a water trap and a golf course. But if I have led groups of people to see this canal, and everybody, no one comes away unimpressed. They suddenly the world comes alive. They had no idea that it's after 170 years after closing, it's still there. However, if you're in a car, you see nothing. So the connection between this historic resource and the bicycle pad, the non-motorized, the active transportation community is fundamental. So if there are facilities, whether they be, bike trails, paths, or well-maintained roads, somebody out there said something about maintenance. I'm all into just well-maintained roads. Any facilities that are good for bicycles, pedestrians, either they're in the vicinity of the canal or adjacent to the canal, crossing the canal, help bring this canal to the public, the local public and the world public. People from all over have seen it. And it works both ways. If you have good facilities and you're going to hear several ideas here after I shut up here, and you'll hear people talk about any link, any improvement anywhere in this area supports this vital resource, and it works both ways. People going to the canal, and it's also an attraction. If somebody lives in Tewksbury and wants to visit a friend in Bedford, they get on their bicycle and go from Tewksbury to Bedford. They will cross over the canal. They'll be able to stop there. About that, they're there, and there it is. So that is sort of an introduction. This is the resource. You'll have to have a very well thought out plan for 27 years out in the future. But remember, the things that you can do to either or enhance bike systems around it. These plans, you will hear more about it, are very, very valuable. And I was saying 1 + 1 = 3. You've got the resource, you've got the plan. You will have a crown, a jewel of the Commonwealth. There you go.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
I wrote it down, so I won't make it too long. Marlies Henderson from Billerica. I'm an outdoors advocate and I'm chair on the planning board, and Erica is watching now too, our director of planning and community development. Today, Billerica is the missing link of an active transportation trail network, but Billerica has the potential to be the master. As a brief update for the audience, and as is already known to NIMPAC, the Billerica Yankee Doodle bike path is at 75% design and on the tip for 2024, and the ground is already broken for the Boston Road bike lane section. That section connects the current Yankee Doodle project via the Boston Road project to Heritage Road. From there, the historic section of the narrow gauge Billerica branch is a rail width trail opportunity, and it's marked as such in the Mass DOT priority trails map. That Billerica branch is not quite abandoned, but the tracks are corroded. So it approaches an intersection with the historic Middlesex Canal towpath and a historic path known as Toothaker Road, which leads to the floating towpath and a future path marking the bank of the current Mill Pond. And that would be the Heritage Park Trail to continue along the canal still to East Chelmsford, but about that later. These canal trails are more than just a vision. They feature already in weekly winter walks since 2015, as well as in Riverfest hikes in the wake of Henry David Thoreau. It's also on the Middlesex Canal. He saw the value and used it. So some connectivity still needs to be secured with with land purchases and right-of-way acquisitions, easements, but the vision of a historic district heritage park is by no means dead, and the vision of a network of trail opportunities is very opportune. Now that there is talk of removing the Talbot Dam, history must be memorialized. The Middlesex Canal feasibility plan was co-written by Nimcock in the 1990s, and the Heritage Park was on the tip for 10 years at 25% design. Alas, at the time, there was insufficient support at the local or the state level to push this any further after the 2008 stock market crash. Focus always seems to go to business. But what will the businesses find if the residents are not aware of their open space and their heritage? Once local residents take pride in their town, they love to care for it, to preserve, to conserve, and to recreate. They will recreate, not only themselves, but they will recreate the town with community preservation funds. Won't businesses appreciate a bicycle commute option? Billerica was once the Bretton Woods of Massachusetts, and it can be still. Billerica and the shops of Iron Horse Parks was once a hub for the railroad industry, and it can be the master link of a rail trail network intersected by the canal towpath. The highest point of the Middlesex Canal, and I'm only talking about Billerica, one of the first canals in the young United States, the trigger for Lowell, before the Erie Canal. Guess what? It started at the summit at the Concord River Mill Pond in Billerica, and it was the source of water and power for the entire 27-mile canal, highway of all. The regional transportation plan would do well to highlight Billerica, the rail trail opportunities, the Middlesex Canal towpath opportunities, the connectivity intersecting the Heritage Park, the future Museum of the Middlesex Canal and Visitor Center, ground zero for the Talbot Dam removal. What we need is visionaries, vision, and sharper vision.
Hi, I'm Doug Chandler, Middlesex Canal Commission from Chelmsford. I'd like to point out, I mentioned the canal started at the Merrimack River in Middlesex Village, which used to be in Chelmsford before Lowell was formed from the adjacent towns. So we have laid out the vision in general all the way down to Boston, and so what is going to connect up to like that. Beautiful thing. On the Minuteman bike path through Lexington and everything, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's a pleasure of my driveway. All the way up to Bedford, which takes over and gets almost to the Ricka Yankee Doodle Trail is taking over and leading all the way up to the border with Chelmsford, Rick Hill Road and the Forum, if you're a hockey fan. At this point, there's a gap. The Bruce Freeman Rail Trail comes up from the south. It's the Chelmsford part of the Bay Circuit Trail. Wonderful, 200 miles of trail, gets all the way up to the Target store about a mile south of here and ends. Then there's proposals in that MassDOT priority plan that says, oh, we'll paint bike lanes on city streets for a mile, and then we'll paint bike lanes on winding rural country roads that are used by trucks for another mile. And at that point, you get to the northern end of the Middlesex Canal as far as is left before the Route 3 and 495 interchange. Then you get to Canal Street, at which point the trail coming up from Billerica logically terminates. But we got a better idea right now, which is, I would still not say better, safer and more scenic solution, which is Chelmsford has an opportunity right now that there's a developer trying to put a 6-acre warehouse, and we'd like to see one of the order of conditions that the town puts on them. Person here right now. One of the orders of conditions that the town would impose would be to carve out an easement from Riverneck Road up to either state-owned land on the side of the 495 ramp to 3, or in the town open space somewhere in there, which would get us over to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail just before that huge tunnel where it goes under 495. So this is just a suggestion that we're working on right now. But if that were completed, we'd have only like a half a mile of riding on River Neck Road, which the county could use. So pretty easy. Right there. Road from the whole Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, you could have a loop, or you could out and just get on the trail, and you'd have only a couple of spaces of riding on town roads or city streets all the way down.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions in person? No, no. Okay, I guess we go to online.
You can also raise your hand. Any questions or comments from people joining us virtually?
Oh.
Hey, Andrew.
I've watched I've watched NIMCOG now for a while, since I was the only person who sit down with Justin a few years ago to provide public comment. And I don't know how you churn out all the plans, the regional transportation plan, the transit plan. The list is long, and I admire you for that. But when we look at things, one of the more difficult things is to take the plan off the shelf and actually execute them. Both a trail along the canal and the extension of the Yankee Doodle, perhaps up as far as the North Billerica Depot, were in the last plan, and yet there's been very little done on either of them. And I'd like to see in this plan how we're particularly going to move forward some of the transit plans and the active transportation plans into actually being constructed and not being a great idea on the shelf.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I was just going to add, Andrew, that's a great comment. We want to see more execution, certainly, and it's really a great time to be working in the space of transportation because, as Justin mentioned, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, or IIJA, IJA, I've heard it called all three, but there's a lot of funding available for more active transportations, and folks are really starting to think more about complete streets and how we can build our communities better suited for people. So we're really excited about where this plan is going, and we are incorporating a lot more of that in this plan. Hopefully we'll see more action now that the funding is there. But thank you.
And we're definitely hearing the need for more active transportation infrastructure in our region. And this plan will include that.
Thank you to George's comment here regarding the good people endorsing and working on the Middlesex Canal Trail system. So you got some virtual kudos here. Interest in you can read it in the room, working towards connecting through via the river walks and the Bruce Freeman. It's good to see drivers of the Middlesex Canal system as a main focal point. Also, Erica commented about the meeting, and thank you for that. Chris has his hand up. I'm going to unmute him.
Oh.
And you good to go there, Chris?
Oh, all right. Yeah. So, I guess my thing was to answer, because just a commenter made about executing the, obviously executing the plan, and then not having it stay on the shelf. Hello? Hello?
Chris, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can
All right,
you,
hold on. Let
yeah,
me
can
hold on.
you
Let me
type
let
in
me
the,
try to.
in the chat? He's on the move.
Hold on. Let me see.
It's weird. We lost the audio.
Can you hear me
Yeah,
now better?
we've lost your audio, Chris.
Hold on a sec. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else online would like to speak? Okay. Thank you, Anita.
Can you guys hear me now?
It may be the room audio. It may people at home might be able to hear it, but
I can hear Chris just fine.
Yeah, I think we're just having an audio issue with.
I think
with
it's that
people at home.
owl.
I think it's on our end.
I think it's the owl, no question.
All right. So then what should I do then if it's on your guys' end? Should I?
Chris, can you type it out?
Yeah. It might take a bit though. That's the only.
Chris, I'm sorry for the audio challenges. So we'll put up a slide in a moment that has our contact information, and we'd love to hear from you.
I guess if someone else could just say it, like if you guys, I don't know if you could hear Mary or
We
Anita.
can hear you now.
Okay. Oh, you can. All right,
Thank you for
great.
your patience.
Oh no, that's fine. My thing was that, so in order, he was talking about the plan being on the shelf, and I think that one of the things that we should look at too is look at what priorities, like what projects that could say improve, whether it's pedestrian safety or just, for example, the communities at a local level that they're going to fund. Because the thing is that the ones that, for example, that Borica is just without federal and state funding going to a local project that it's going to fund itself, that project's probably going to get done a lot more faster. So then the question is what, because I think the thing is that when you add state, if you even take $1 from the federal government, well, then that's just going to basically make the process slow, because there's just so much that comes with that one federal dollar. There's a lot of strings attached to it, and that's what kind of gunks up the process as to whether, so kind of coordinating with towns. All right, well, what's something that's the federal one that's going to take a long time, and then from there the state, where we can get money for that, and then at the bottom. So because I think the towns can do the incremental improvements probably the fastest with their own money, and then from there you can go up to maybe the higher things with the state and federal. You guys probably do that already, but that was just a comment that I wanted to make.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So this plan is, so this plan deals a lot with federal funding, and there is a process to achieve that money, and there's a reason for that process. I mean, we want to do these projects right. We want to do these projects correctly, and get them done on a timely manner. Going through the federal process of getting a project through design and getting that funding, that federal funding for construction. Yes, it does take longer, but you can do bigger projects. There is more funding available at the federal level than at the town level. So a lot of smaller projects typically can go faster through the state process, but then there are state-owned roadways that are subject to MassDOT review, and that does take time. And this plan will have a lot of focus on how we spend our federal funding over the next 27 years or so. But we will also, we'll also provide options for other types of programs, other types of funding in the region and throughout the state. So yeah, thank you for that comment, Chris.
Any other final comments or thoughts from either people in person or participants joining virtually? Any final thoughts or comments?
Travanti, I used to have the lonely task of being the freight planner in the Boston region MPO. Is there for the long range transportation plan, is there a freight component, or does that tend to be more for the tip? And I know you're working on, we've talked about that, and it is important, and I know you're working very hard. Why don't you just share a brief update with our extended audience about what's happening with freight?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a freight section in the regional transportation plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we are still in the developing process of the plan. So I know I met with you and we discussed about freight, and I will implement those comments and feedback in the plan as much as possible. And I've also been meeting with other potential freight professionals. So we are still in the process of gathering more information about freight, and it will be included in the plan. We have a section for freight.
Travanti and Justin, they work closely with the freight working group out of Boston, and they've been attending those meetings regularly. And down the road, we hope to work on a freight plan for our region.
Add that, so there are a lot of public meetings happening right now. So the state is developing their freight plan. So if you are interested, you can look into their website, and they have one tomorrow. So if you're interested, you can participate in that meeting to know what is happening as far as the state freight plan is concerned.
Okay, so yeah, we have one more question, and I just want to be, I want to recognize people's time. We've got approximately 2 minutes left in this meeting, but yeah, Kathy asked the question of putting in a rail line from Concord, New Hampshire to Boston. Has it gone anywhere? Well, currently it's in study, especially on the New Hampshire side. There's been a lot of issues at the MBTA level with their current service, and they don't feel at this point it's a major priority. But we've done the Capital Corridor study. New Hampshire is currently working on some preliminary design, and yeah, Andrew. Oh, so let me just repeat that for people at home. So the New Hampshire Governor's Council actually met and canceled the current study that's looking to extend the commuter rail from Lowell into New Hampshire. So it's kind of on hold at the moment. Yes, and thank you for that. Thank you for that live update. So I'd like to talk about, we can talk about it further offline, but I'm going to wrap this up now. Can you move the slide forward? So I just want to thank everyone for attending tonight and giving your opinions and statements and questions. It was very helpful for us as we develop this plan. So if we didn't get to your questions tonight, I just want to let everyone know that all the questions in the chat are recorded, and we will be following up with each of you who asked questions and didn't get them answered tonight. So there will be a follow-up. And this recording will be available on our website. We'll likely put it onto YouTube and link it from our website at .org. So thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. For those in attendance, feel free. There's food in the back. There's refreshments. Grab some on your way out. And for those at home, thank you for taking the time with us tonight. And have a good night, everyone. I'm going to put our contact information here on the last slide. So thank you. And this is our contact information if anyone would like it. Thank you. Thank you.
No video.